Liza Doolittle and Mr. Medicine. Sometimes medicine just doesn't do the trick. It's looking at the inside, to how you're living your life and how you get your perceptions of yourself. I'm really pleased to welcome my first guest this evening into the studio, and his name is Dr. Rohan Weerasinghe.
Nice to meet you, Sue.
Have I said it right?
You have, yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
It's a mouthful. It's like Smith in Sri Lanka, apparently.
Oh, is it? Okay,
Yeah.
so it's quite a common
It's
name
quite
then.
common, yeah.
All right. Where are you about? You're from? Because I know you live in Hitchin now.
Well, I actually live in Herefordshire, but originally born in Hitchin, and
Yeah.
I grew up there till I was 18 years of age. So I was a Hitchin-Letchworth person for a long time.
Me too, yeah.
So,
my parents had a pub in Hitchin.
Oh,
and,
really?
Yeah, my first, let me think, 8 years I spent in Hitchin.
Yeah, 1966 I was born there. And
Wow.
then sort of gravitate between Hitchin and Letchworth for many years.
Fantastic. You see, there's a cosmic connection
Yeah, there you
already,
go.
which is special.
I feel like I'm coming home.
Absolutely. Now, you trained as a civil engineer.
I did.
That was what you wanted to do, or was it?
Well, I was passionate about getting out and making changes, and initially my education was very mathematical and formulaic, and so I
Yeah.
got thrown into that world of engineering, and for many years studied and got my degree, got my PhD, and found myself, my specialism was supporting all these big buildings that go up and stopping them collapsing. For example, like the Twin Towers, when that collapsed, all the foundations there had to be rebuilt again, and that sort of changed very slowly over time into, instead of engineering with buildings, working with people, and human engineering is the term I like to use now.
Isn't it? And that's a lovely term as well, because we start off, as babies, and
We
there
do.
we are, and we have our natural way with ourselves in our posture and everything,
Yeah.
and then the whole big world goes and changes it all.
Yeah.
Not for the good sometimes for
No.
some people. So how can you help people? Because I know that I'm, looking at you on Google, and there's YouTube, there's no end of clips and things about you and
Yeah.
how inspirational you are. How did you start to make that transition yourself?
Well, it's interesting because the book that's coming out is called The Turning Point, and
Yeah.
for me I experienced a series of turning points which really started when I was 13, when my father passed away. He was the same age I am today, in his mid-40s, and then a series of events occurred into my 30s where my mum developed cancer, I went through a divorce, my stepfather had a double heart attack, and lots of things caused me to make a big shift, and that resulted in me learning and developing lots of tools for me, which since then I've been able to help thousands and thousands of other people use to change their lives and turn them around.
I think one of the most, the main elements in when you do have something happen in your life that really knocks you for six or gives
Yeah.
you a cosmic slap, as I like to
Yeah.
call it, is actually identifying the fact that, crikey, I need to change something
Yeah,
here.
absolutely. I think what happens is a lot of people tend to get into this dark hole where they're looking outside and blaming the rest of the world, whether it's the government or their health or their partner. Maybe they're going through a challenge in their relationship, maybe even their health, and they're blaming the food they're eating. But the reality is we have to start on the inside, because
Yeah.
sometimes we've developed beliefs and rules about the world that have come from our parents, and we don't even know where we've adopted them from. So it's very much about looking at the world in a different way and saying, okay, if I was to take back control, what could I do next to take that turning point, to make a change in my life?
So where can we begin then? Obviously, we've got to say, I need to change something.
Yeah.
All right. So let's say that... I'm trying to think. Well, you've got lots of, bits and pieces in the book about people that you've worked with.
Yeah.
So, without naming names or anything, let's take an example.
Okay, so let's use an example of somebody. Right now, we're in the heart of what people have regarded as the worst recession ever, and it's had a lot of impact on people's lives financially. I think it's caused a lot of distress because of jobs being lost and relationships being strained. So I often meet people that are in financial challenges because one's lost the job and the other one's still working, and the person that's out of work is really frustrated and not quite sure what to do next, and they're almost getting to a point of desperation. So the first step I always say to people is that the first step to change is awareness, is to step back and say, okay, this is the situation that as it is. Don't make it any worse than it is. Don't make it any better than it is. Just see it as it is and don't get overwhelmed by it. And then start to look inside at the language that's going on, because for most people they start to use negative language patterns. They'll use words like, I'm struggling to find a job. Why is it I can't seem to find any work? Why is it nobody wants to take me on? And the minute you focus on that, that becomes your obsession. And then you attract more of it. As you said, the cosmic.
Exactly, yeah.
It's all about resonance.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. And you do attract these kind of things.
So the first step is being aware of what you're saying to yourself, and often we don't actually notice it. It's only when somebody else says, my gosh, I feel, when you're around somebody that's very negative, we were just having this conversation before we went on air, and it's that negative energy that can draw you down, whereas somebody that's radiant, and okay, it's not about saying, well, looking through rosy glasses, it's about saying, what can I do next to attract that job opportunity to me? I work with a lady who was, from the age of about 2 till 7, was physically and sexually abused by a member of her family, and when I met her at 63 years of age, she's in the book actually, I talk about her, she hadn't actually had a physical relationship with a man for 60 years because in her eyes all men were the same. And we sat down, we spent 2 or 3 hours working together, and I helped to change her whole perception and beliefs about how she can have an amazing, dynamic, beautiful relationship with a man. And I met her 3 years later, and she had an engagement ring, and she was in tears, and she was just a completely different person. So, you know, it doesn't matter how extreme it is. If somebody's listening to this now and they're feeling that life's in a really dark place, there are ways to make that turning point. It's about stepping back and saying, I want to make that change, and being prepared to look out and look for help, really.
Yeah. And sometimes it isn't easy to let that out because there's something that holds you back. And you say you do stay in there. And if you can't move on from there, you'll stay there forever.
Exactly.
You know, and it's really sad.
You're absolutely right. You're stuck in the rut. And, I mean, people talk about the rut, and I always make a joke when I'm talking to my audience. I say a rut is like a grave with the ends dug out. You're 6 feet down and you just keep running. And people around us don't always have the tools, and they see us a certain way. And I think it's about stepping out and saying, okay, if my life could be different, what would I want? And not being afraid to say outwardly,
exactly.
I'm wanting something different.
Yeah.
Because we're like tuning forks. I know you've got a beautiful voice. If you were to sing at the right note, you could crack a glass just by hitting the right frequency. And as human beings, it's been proven now that if we are putting certain thoughts in our mind, it can actually send out an energy that attracts people to us. And you know this, when you see people at a party that are in a bad place, they tend to gravitate other negative people.
Yeah,
and you see them all hanging together. Negative people hang together.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. If you go into that place, you will attract that to you. So if you can start to change the way you feel about yourself and about the world, opportunities like, oh, that's a coincidence, another coincidence.
Yeah,
we're like tuning forks. That's what we really
exactly. Very much so. And I always say there's a lot of cosmic connection with everybody, and that we are connected in different ways. And for me, I've decided I've become very honest with myself and not do anything that was difficult. It was just I just wanted easy stuff, you know, and that's what I do.
And things
now.
Start to flow in your direction.
Absolutely.
But you've got that radiant energy. It comes straight out of you, and I can imagine people almost want to come up to you and just talk to you because
they do. Yeah, I'm always
you're a tuning fork too.
All right. Well, if you want to ask any questions to Rohan, he's here. 0845 30 50 007. We're going to talk some more about things, and hopefully you will feel uplifted and getting in tune with us as well. Jim Capaldi and Love Hurts. Sue Martin's big night in Dr. Rohan. We're a singer. I love the idea. You already said to you, have I said your name right? Yeah, it's like we're a singer. Great idea. The Bald Truth Turning Point is a book, a 6-step process for transforming your life. How long should it take you to get yourself together in your eyes?
Well, I mean, if somebody's really hungry and they want to make changes, I've seen it happen over just a few days because they're just at that turning point where, you know, sometimes you wake up in the morning, you're just ready to make that bursting change, or something's happened, possibly a loss of a job or a bad relationship situation, and you've had enough. It's been going on for years, and then I've seen changes happen over literally a few days. For other people, it can take a few months, could even take 5 or 6 months. But I think the quicker that you allow the process to take place, the more you'll notice the change inside you. So it can happen rapidly if somebody wants it to.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept that people have about life is supposed to be, and to some extent, you know, it's very media led.
Yeah.
And if, for instance, there's that cooking program, you know, We Like to Cook or whatever, and there's people that are there, and I watch it sometimes and I think, do they really believe that life is that, or am I living in another world? Because, you know, there are so many things that people feel that they should have and that should be there, which are quite materialistic in that respect, and kind of there to impress people.
Yeah.
And while it's nice to think, I want a bit more, or I'd like to have more money, it's not always kind of like how your life should be.
No.
So from your own experience, and you said you had to make changes and attracting that success, how did you where do you find yourself now?
I'm very blessed, actually. I've got a beautiful fiancée. She's Danish. I've got a lovely daughter who's 2.5, who's probably listened to this evening before she goes to bed. And I live in Herefordshire. I've financially, I'm very secure, and all these great things, which is lovely. Yeah. But it wasn't like that previously. And the turning point for me wasn't, I want to be wealthy, I want to have a great lifestyle. It was more, I want to make a shift that aligns with who I am more. And I think what happens is the universe almost sends us a message to say, you're on the wrong path, Ro. Yeah. You're not actually pursuing what you should be doing in life, and certain stumbling blocks come along, and often we miss the signal because our head is so down doing what we're doing. We're in a job, we're chasing money, we're chasing the ideal world, the material things you talked about, and we stop we actually forget to stop and breathe and think, what do I want to wake up in the morning doing? What do I really want to be purposeful about and passionate about? And I know this may sound a little bit off the wall and people say, well, surely it's not like that. But the reality is that these are all just wake-up calls. And it's only when we stop and say, actually, am I really doing what I want to do in life, or do I want to do something different? If I genuinely want to do something different, let me create a turning point. Let me refocus on what I want and then start to attract that to me.
Sure.
It could even be